You're listening to Nectar, sweet musings for your creative soul. And now your host, Stacey Maney.
Today, I'm featuring a conversation with Devorah Spilman, who I met a few years ago, and I've always wanted to have her on the show. I was so excited when she reached out to me to be on her virtual summit that she's launching. And I just wanted to have a conversation with her and share her wisdom with you. And if you don't know Devorah, she is all about stories. And she's about understanding the power of story and really finding that story within us, finding our soul story and our soul language. And she has a whole process that she brings women through as they create their businesses or their books or whatever else is within them that they're ready to create. And she leads us through a little glimpse of that. And it's called Accessing Your Soul's Language. So she'll lead us through that little exercise. It's like a 5-minute journey that we'll take during this conversation. So make sure you have something to write with, a sketchbook, or that you're in a really cozy place in your house where when we get to that part, you can just close your eyes and really dive in to hear what story your soul has ready for you to hear. And I hope it is as inspiring to you as it was to me. I'm still mind blown with the things that came up during this meditation, and it's so simple. And so find that cozy spot and enjoy. So welcome, Devorah. It's such an honor to have you here. I've been following you now since we met in person. And I just remember I got to meet you at a conference, and the energy was like so chaotic, and you were a very grounding force within all of that. So I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So do you want to share a little bit about what you're up to in the world before we begin, and kind of the medicine that you're working with right now?
So that would be stories. And I've really been a storyteller my whole life. Like, I don't know, probably my parents will say really my whole life. But when I was 18, I started telling stories when I was working with children as an assistant in a preschool. And I just started telling them the story about this made-up world called Zambadoodle. And they loved it so much that the next day, can you tell us again? And can you tell us again? And just the story just came out of me. And then I just kept telling that story, and I developed it and worked in, school, in the whole school systems with it, and how children create their own stories. And more and more, really, storytelling became what I did in the world, in schools, for parents, for communities. I worked as an artist in the schools in the Santa Cruz system after I graduated university. And it continued to develop as my Jewish life developed. And I began to reconnect to my whole Jewish spiritual life after having left it for a while. And so then I started to tell Jewish spiritual stories in my Jewish community. And then I went to Israel and spent about 30 years ago, it was a long time ago, but I spent about 5 years living in Israel. And I also, during all this time, developed a clown character called Dilly Zuzilly the Clown. So in Israel, I also performed as a clown, and I even went back in 2000 when everybody else was canceling their trips and traveled all over to do my clown shows for communities where nobody else would go. And I developed this creative Jewish spiritual way of really bringing this very elevated, expanded spiritual consciousness through a Jewish lens. I had left Judaism because it didn't feel spiritual enough until I found other really spiritual Jewish leaders who were creative and expanded. And so now, and so wait, I'll back up one more step. I then taught in a Jewish day school, and eventually was a storyteller of many schools in Los Angeles, moved to Portland, was the storyteller in their school, and then the Jewish studies teacher. And then there came a time when it was like a new administration. They didn't really see me for who I was, and it started to feel like this is not right for me anymore. I'd been doing this work a long time, and I managed to get fired. I didn't really try to get fired. Exactly. But it was clearly the hand of God, because it was such an absurd reason they fired me. It was for some small supervision thing. They kept me even after they fired me. They said, please, can you teach till the end of the year? Can you still teach your summer programs? And then when I had unemployment to create my own business. And I went, I'm going to create my own business.
Mm.
And I was like, well, should it be puppets or should it be parenting? How to use puppets as your parent, how to tell. And I had helped a friend of mine with the guided process I use with metaphor and image to win like this multi-million-dollar contract in his big corporate company. And he said, Devorah, I'm making you a website. So he made me my first website that was called Spilman Story Selling. And then I went, I have no idea how to have a business. I do not have a single business bone in my body. I was like, okay. So I researched online. I'm sure that happens to many people. And I landed in a program that fortuitously taught me how to host a telesummit, which was extraordinarily confusing to me for a couple of years. But it turns out to be the most perfect thing for a storyteller. And eventually I shifted out of Spilman story selling, created In Story, and my website, just my name, Devorah Spilman. And I shifted to helping other women to find their, what I call your soul story. Like, what is it you're here to say? What is it here you're to do? How do you come out of hiding and dare to be seen for who you really are? And then it turned out that hosting a telesummit where I interview people and they tell their story was like made for me. And so after it wasn't confusing to me anymore, I started to put my clients on my show. They said in the beginning, they're like, Devorah, we're so not doing that. I said, oh, yes, you are. And still to this day, my clients are on my show. We'll talk about it later. And they still think this is so hard. How do I do this? Because especially most of the women I work with are over 50. And we didn't grow up in the online domain. And many of the women I work with have had amazing lives, done incredible work in the world, have gotten up over and over and truly have wisdom to bring into the world.
Right.
They've just never done it in the online domain. So I help them to, how do you tell your story online? How do you create a free gift that will give somebody something more to connect with you? And so it's like it brought together my passion for storytelling and this deeper calling that has developed where I really believe we have something to say. And now, as we'll talk about as we go on, like this sense that there's a hunger of the soul, that our souls are hungry for authentic, deep, spiritual, creative nourishment. And we are the ones who are providing it. So how is that in a nutshell?
That is beautiful. I have to show you this paper I have hanging in front of my studio all the time. It's like your soul. I don't know. This is like a tattoo or something. But when you started speaking to soul language and like getting in touch with that story that our soul, that we came here with, that we have created over time, like I felt that in my stomach, like my core. Yeah. Could you speak more to the soul story that we have? And yeah, we'll start there.
So I think that what happens is we get systematically taught in most school systems to shut down our access to the language of our soul. Our soul speaks to us in image and metaphor and story and through our imagination. And all children have access to this until they have parents or teachers who say, stop that.
Right.
Get with the program, do what you're told, get a good grade, follow the directions, stop talking about that silly business. And because of that, we shut that down. The good news is you get to have it back. It's not gone. It just gets covered over and shut down. And your soul story is the language of your soul. It's what lights you up. It's your creative, spiritual self that has so much delight in the world around it. Just think of watching a 3-year-old. I have a 3-year-old grandson, and the world is a wonderful place. He started saying, "Are you happy?" Asking people, "Are you happy?" Yes. You say, "Are you happy?" He says, "I'm happy." And he looks at the world and everything is just an adventure. It's interesting. He wants to see what it is. Everything is a yes until it's a no. Instead of for the rest of it, everything's a no until you work hard to make it a yes. And that flow of saying yes It's just this joy, like that flow state. You're an artist, so you know that flow state is a wondrous place to be. We get it in nature, we get it in art, in great conversation, in music, and in play. But school is absolutely dedicated to eradicating the flow state, in my humble opinion, which is not a very good one of schools, even though I worked in them. Now that I think about it, I kind of infiltrated the system, right? Because I would go in and do storytelling for a classroom or a whole audience, a whole auditorium, and all of a sudden it'd be like, right? You could just feel the hush come over the room.
Yeah.
And the children entered this state of just openness as the story just flowed in them, and they could let go of all their worries. It was just beautiful.
Yeah. We have a nighttime ritual at our house of having like, we'll tell a story together. And so all I need to do is say once upon a time. And my kids just feel it, like they're just ready, and they take it, 10 miles further. And I feel so fortunate to be, I have a 3-year-old and 5-year-old, and to be in that space with them where everything is a yes. And so my next question would be, how, when you're working with these women and the people are coming to you, how do you help them shift from that no back to a yes? Like, what's maybe one of the first steps that you would say?
Well, since you're asking, it's not an intellectual process, it's an experiential process, because in order to get into that flow state, you have to stop doing stuff. You have to close your eyes and you have to breathe, and you have to get into what I call a state of connected flow. And I've developed a process that sort of came to me as I was starting to teach storytelling. Right. And it's become the signature base of all the work I do, because no matter how much we talk about it, that won't do it. Because if you're in your try harder mind, you are not going to hear the language of your soul. You're not going to see it or feel it or know about it. So if you want, you can do it.
Yes.
All right. Okay, perfect. So InStory is my whole company, and the InStory Way guided process has the acronym STATE, and you don't have to write it down. I'm just going to lead you through the whole thing, and it will take you through getting into that other state of connected flow. And then I will do a very basic version of it, and I use it in many, many ways, which we can talk about a little more. So go ahead and close your eyes and just begin to notice your breath coming in and out. And really allow yourself to feel that shift to stillness. And feel a sense of breathing bigger than your physical self. And then allow your awareness to shift to that flow from above, and feel your connection to God, to Source, the universe. And feel that pure light from above coming down to the top of your head, filling your whole body, your whole being with light, love, healing, blessing, guidance, clarity, down through your feet into the earth, grounding you in the earth. And breathe up that solid, rooted, comforting energy of the earth into the center of your being. And be aware of being in that state of connected flow. This is always the first step of the InStory guided process. It has the acronym STATE, and the first step is always stop and breathe. And this is your shift out of all of the busyness and the demands of the outer world. Even doing just this step alone will shift you into this expanded state. The next step is unique to the InStory process, and I call it the think about it step. And this is how you direct consciously what you want to receive from your soul. and it'll allow you at the end to connect the dots. So for today, very simply, I'd like you to start by tuning into what are you deeply grateful for. I start to feel the gratitude and add to gratitude being grateful for your gifts. What are your gifts? What are you good at? How do you make a difference? What do you do that you feel proud of? Feel deeply grateful for your gifts, for the blessings of your life, for your abilities, your talents. Just take a moment and allow the positive side to be felt. The next two steps always go together. They are ask and trust. And whenever you do something with this realm, you ask and you always trust the first thing you get, no matter what it is. So what I want you to do is I want you to ask, what is an image or a metaphor for who I am and what I do in the world? An image or a metaphor for my soul gift that's just right for me in this moment. And you trust the first thing you get, no matter what it is. And if you went through, no, not that, not that, not that, trust the first thing you got, no matter what it is. If you didn't get anything, stay very patient and just wait. Notice the details. Let it grow, let it expand. Feel into it. What's the feeling of it? What does it seem to be about? The last step is explain, interpret. What does it seem to be about? What does it seem to mean? How are you like this image? How is it like you? And if you want to know more about your image or there's something you don't understand, you can use ask and trust. Again, at this point, you can ask a question and trust the first thing you get. You can ask, what else is there for me to know or see or feel or understand about this image? And then you always trust the first thing you get, because that's how you receive the language of your soul and not your ego and resistance. Trust what you get. Allow it to unfold however it's unfolding. If it's something that's very beautiful to you, then breathe it in. If it's something unclear, just allow it to be unclear. Ask another question. What you get in this work, it's always true. It might take a little work to interpret it, to understand it, but it will always be true. And know you can come back, go through this again if you wish to, but for now, begin to bring yourself back into the moment. Reconnect to your breath. Breathe yourself back into your body, into your awareness. Wiggle your fingers. And begin to bring yourself back into the moment. Stretch a little, take a couple of deep breaths, and when you're ready, open your eyes, and just when you're all ready, come on back. And because you're going to be watching this in a recording, what I encourage you to do is just pause the video and write down what you got. Just write it down how you got it, however it came to, write it down. I'm going to ask Stacy to share what she got, but you can find ways to connect with me or with Stacy if you want to share what you got with us. One of my geniuses is I can always interpret what you got. Now I'll show you how I do it. We'll do it with Stacy a little bit, and you'll see as you do this work, you get better and better at interpreting the language of image, metaphor, and story that is the language of your soul. So what was your image, Stacy?
And my image was a rose.
A rose. So just describe it. So it's always important to describe the detail of your image. So what color was it? How did it look? Just describe it in detail.
Well, I wanted it to be pink, but it was red.
Okay.
So it was red and just full, really vibrant, really full of life, a really strong stem. And it was rose unfolding was the words that I kept hearing.
And what does that mean, do you think? What's its message to you?
I was feeling emotional around it because I'm studying the feminine energy, and the rose comes up as just this, like the holy grail, right? It's like I would put it above myself, and then to see that reflection and be like, oh yeah, it's equal. And so that was big for me, for that to be what came up.
Because what you get is always true. So the question was, what's an image or metaphor for who you are and what you do? And a lot of times what you will get is a deep confirmation of a truth that the world has tried to prevent us from feeling. But that's why it often will make you feel emotional, because it's so true.
Yeah.
It's just this deep truth that beautiful archetypal opening of the rose, of the feminine beauty and strength and power. So you're holding that. And whenever I do this for someone who's, doing a podcast or an interview series, you are holding that energy for everyone who's watching. Like your whole thing of nectar, like that whole is the opening of the flower to reveal its nectar. So this is the opening of the rose to reveal the divine feminine power. And it's such an archetypal image that as soon as you get it, you now hold that for your whole community and your whole audience.
Yeah. I part of the emotions are because I don't always feel worthy to hold that rose.
Right.
It's like I want to put the rose out and stand behind it or aside. And there was this shift energetically of like, I am standing right here with the rose and we are one.
Right. That is who you are. It's an image for who you are. Right. So it's not outside. And this worthiness thing, it's like, oh my gosh, if we could talk about the epidemic of unworthiness, like,
yes.
It's just the work we have to do. We were all made to feel unworthy of this deep calling of our soul, and that we're not allowed to talk about this big, beautiful, powerful, deep, feminine, expanded callings of our soul. No, it's okay. No, it's just over here, It's like, so it's going to strengthen you to feel it. And this is true for everyone watching. When you get something that's really beautiful like that, you want to breathe it in. And feel that is your embodied beingness. It's an image for who you are and what you do in the world. So it will reset that old feeling, like, oh, that I'm not worthy of it, or I have to put it over here, because we all have versions of that. But this work, how we said, it's like, how do you get in touch with your soul? That is your true soul energy.
I feel that so much. And I love how this was also a huge shift when you were explaining that, to trust the first thing that comes up. That's a radical thing, right? Like, to trust. I mean, that rose came up before I even finished the question. And it's like, could you imagine writing a book and just going with the first thing the whole way through, doing a painting. And I always say, like, when we create our paintings, it's like, what is the most honest brushstroke? What is the most honest mark that you can make next? And it's like this honesty that it sets us free, but it takes so much courage to trust that first thing.
Right. And to trust that it's not coming from your try harder mind.
Yeah.
Right. Because we think we have to try really hard to get it right. And this comes from a different place, and there's a place for the editor try harder mind, but not first.
Yeah.
Not first. Like, if you're going to publish something, or something's going to be finished on a very high level. So then when you've got all your flow content, then you can play with it and move it around and do things to it. But if you start with your editor, you'll never get anything good.
Yeah.
It'll never be good enough if you get it. If you have to get it from your editor, forget it.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that's such a huge place where, like, heart-centered creatives, anyone who's creating from that space of love, from their heart, from their body, I think that's the biggest issue that we get stuck on sometimes. Is like, we get stuck up here in our brain and we're trying to, like, perfect it all, and we take out the truth.
Right.
It's like, can we be honest in our work? And it's an incredible challenge and journey to take.
Well, here's a tip that will really help you and everybody else.
Yes.
This is an absolute foolproof way to know if what you're doing will work. If it moves you, it will move your tribe. We are used to thinking of sharing our deep guided work with the wrong people, because that's the only people who were handy when we were growing up. So we still have a picture in our heads of the father who couldn't stand it, the teacher who said, get with the program, the coworker who said, get with your job. We still have those people in our head when we think of bringing this totally awesome thing that came to us. Because if you're honest, those things that come to you in the flow, if you're honest, you love them, right? Don't you love the things that come to you?
So much. Yes.
And then don't you go through, but will anyone else like it? This is a really big thing. And I had to do this. You want me to talk about the trees? I had to do this because I'm a big go in the trees person. Yes. So one day I channeled this piece of writing that I talk into my phone types for me, which is a brilliant thing to do if you're outside and want to record writing.
Yes.
So I do that all the time. And so I recorded this. I was standing in the trees, and it was like a blessing from the trees. And I talked it in my phone and, typed it out. And then I thought, oh, that's so awesome. I thought, that's so beautiful. That is really awesome. I just loved it so much. And I thought, I should share that with my community. No, I can't share that with my community. Like, what am I going to tell them, that I channeled some blessing from the trees? I'm like, not that I don't do that.
Right.
But I had to take my own medicine. I said, if it moved me, it moved my tribe, my audience. And of course, they loved it so much. I got so much feedback. Oh my gosh, I felt like you were talking to me. That moved me. I loved it. I printed it out. I put it up on my wall. I mean, it's like, okay, I'll do it again. But I had to not listen to the part of me that went, oh, I don't know if I should send this out to anyone else. I loved it. Like, I thought it was beautiful, because the things that come through like that,
right?
You're not trying hard to create it. It's being given to you. And that work that comes through in flow, whether it's in our art or our writing or any other kind of creating, if you are honest, when it comes through on that level, you are moved by it. You are honored and moved and just filled with such joy to be receiving something so beautiful. So then if it did that to you, I mean, I do edit them, like they have mistakes, like I clean it up, but I don't change it very much. I just clean it up a little. So use this. If it moves you, it will move your tribe. Don't send it to some random person who can't stand what you do.
Right. Yeah. And what you're speaking to is such a powerful practice that we can start getting into, is like, who are the people that are lighting up over the same things? They're on the same page, and it's like, find them, connect to them, and I love your event that you're creating. There's so many things going on online and in person now. There's ways to find your tribe and your community. And I think some of the best things I've done for myself have been when, I sign up for the workshop, or, if something lights you up, just step closer to that, and you'll find the people that are right there waiting. Right. That gets to be your community. So actually, do you want to speak to the event that you're creating?
Yes, because it's perfect. Exactly. Because here's the thing, the In-Story show that I create, that I host twice a year, it's a classic telesummit and a kind of an innovative event. But what's very powerful about it is that it is a tribe. So I'm so excited. Like, Stacey, you're coming on to speak on my show. Like, I'm doing these really exciting live conversation videos with all kinds of extraordinary women who are all doing this creative spiritual work, and they're not afraid to talk about it. And when you come and you watch, we're calling it Soul Hunger, and it's all about hearing God, making meaning, leaving a legacy. Like, how do you nourish your soul, tell your story, and shine your light? Like, how do we come out of hiding and dare to be seen? And we do it together. You don't have to do it alone. And So Stacy's going to give you a link so that you can join. It's a completely free show, and it's really more of a journey. I like to call it the In-Story Show, but it's really a journey, and it takes you through watching something, engaging, and then when the whole thing's over, I'm going to do a free 5-day workshop on how do you create your own soul story. Like, how do you find it? How do you trust it? What do you do with it? And it's part of what happened was I learned, as I told you, I learned how to host a telesummit. And then eventually I created a whole year-long program to help women to really find their soul story, their soul calling, and then not to keep it in their living room. And at a certain point, I took the women who are in my year program and I said, you are going to be a speaker on my show. And they said, no, we're not. I said, yes, you are. And what it does is it puts them in front of people who want to hear what they have to say, who are moved by them, who are inspired by them. Our stories really inspire each other. And so women come into my year-long program and they find their stories and their voice, and they learn how to create a free gift and how to help the next person, how to bring something new in the world. I have a woman, she's an artist, and she brought an art installation to her accounting firm. They now have an art exhibit. She did it once. I want her to do it again. She turned her art into these magnificent clocks that do all these unusual things. And another woman, she created a whole thing called Key Collage, and she didn't have anything, but she knew she had a talent. She had a gift for collage. There are these gifts we have inside of us that haven't had a turn yet. Like a lot of the women I work with are over 50, and we did a lot of sending everybody else out into the world. And it's our turn. And when you come into the In-Story Show and you hear these women sharing their story, we're going to have a Facebook group. You can start to share your story. You'll be able to connect with women like Stacy and all the other. I think we have almost 30 women now on this time. It's just amazing. And every single woman, I feel when I've been doing the interviews this time, each one of them makes me feel this almost tears in my eyes, hope for what we can do for our world. I just think it's so moving and so beautiful. And all of the work that women are doing are outside the box of the old way of doing things. It's all creative and spiritual and elevated and new. And it's such an inspiration. There's so many things that are so devastating that happen in the rest of the world, and we are here to lift up into this higher sphere. And I'm listening to all these women who are doing that, and what it means is that all of you who are watching can do it too.
Yes, I see this night sky with these stars, and we were talking about letting the light in, like just all of this light coming through us onto the planet right now.
Yeah, which needs it a lot.
Yeah. Well, okay, I have one final question for you. If we could just take a moment to connect to the trees. I know you're inside, but is there a message that they have for us now, or that you keep receiving from them for the planet at this time?
I'll tell you the thing that came to me that helps me the most, which is a lot of times we will think of ourselves as a metaphor of a tree. It's such a beautiful metaphor. Like, and I've done this a lot as a tree with roots going down. And I even have this whole, I wasn't going to tell this part, but this whole image came to me one day of being these beacon trees. This was a personal image of these trees of light that have the canopy up in the higher realms. And
wow.
So there's lots of images that we can have for ourselves individually, uniquely as a tree. But there was a day I was walking in the forest and I was working on how do I have more faith, more trust. And I just stopped in my tracks, and suddenly what came to me was, this message, you are not just a tree, you are also a whole forest. And I was standing in the forest, and when I could see the whole forest, there are trees in every condition you can imagine. There's fallen down trees and burnt trees and broken trees and shrubbery and seeds and branches, and there's every kind of stage of experience and development you can imagine. But when one tree falls down in the forest is still whole. So when I'm a whole forest and something happens, I am still whole. So there's the tree moment, like if my tree gets burned down, if my tree is sick, if my personal stuff. So I feel that in the moment, but that tree is still, we're both. We're both. You are both a tree alone going through whatever you're going through. And if you take a moment and you expand, I know how I said, breathe yourself bigger. If you expand and you feel, I am also a whole forest, that's how you get back up. And when you go into the forest, when you go into the trees, the other message is that we are always here for you. The trees, you can always come to us and we will always be standing strong. And the other morning, I really got this message that we're standing in the light. And one of the things I say often to people is when you want to tell a story of the darkness, of the struggles of your life, they'll say, how can I tell this story, Devorah? It's too dark. I say, you can tell the stories of the darkness when you're standing in the light. And the trees hold that for us. There are many ways to get back to standing in the light, but when you are standing in the light, you can tell the turning point stories of how you got out of the darkness and you're standing in the light.
Thank you. Yes, yes. This all feels just like big steps back towards the light. So thank you so much for all of your words of wisdom and for the love and energy that you're putting into the event you're creating now. We'll have links to sign up for that and hopefully you can join us.
Come join us for the In-Story Show, and you can find it in the links. You can find it at the instoryshow.com and connect with us when you join the show. Come look for Stacy, come look for me. And I always say when I tell people, I always tell them, you know what I want you to do? I want you to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Devorah.
You are so welcome.
If you loved that and you want to hear more about Devorah, more about her community and what she's up to, then you can click the link attached to this video to sign up for her series called Soul Hunger. And this free event begins November 6th, and it's all about nourishing your soul, telling your story, and shining your light. And I think it is so beautifully relevant for where we're at right now in the year and with everything going on in the world, for us to really go inward instead of being so consumed by everything outside, so that we can be that light. We can unearth the light within us and be that light for the world right now. And so I hope you join us. I get to talk in one of the sections towards the end of the event, and you'll see the whole schedule and everything when you sign up. So feel free to click the link below to sign up for her free gift, and I hope we'll see you there. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Nectar. Go to stacymaney.com and subscribe to get show updates, opportunities to go deeper, and inspiration sent straight to your inbox.